Spawn On Me is the premier podcast spotlighting people of color. Every week, we talk news, what we've been playing, and tell you who's invited to the cookout. Our show is all about talking about gaming through a prism of blackness, because we are the culture. Welcome to Chicago, y'all.
What's good, everybody in Chicago? I am here with one of my favorite folks on the planet because it is almost EVO time. It is time to get your hands on the sticks and get that ass beat by your local friends and family from all across the world. We're here with Rick Thiher, General Manager of EVO. Sir, how are you doing? So thank you so much for being here and giving us some time on your calendar today.
Happy to join you. I am living those 14-hour days at the moment, but I'm good.
I can imagine what it's like to be basically a month out from the biggest show on the planet in the fighting game space. And I would say, now one of the biggest conventions in general within the entertainment space. Besides the 14-hour days, are you holding up okay? Are you eating? Are you getting hydrated? Are you taking care of yourself?
We got some water. I can promise that we're being hydrated.
Yes.
Can't claim I'm eating the best. Downside to 14-hour days is you eat the fastest food available, but we're getting by. We're trying to have the best time we can with it.
I dig it, man. Look, I just came from a convention and I was supposed to eat well. There was supposed to be vegetables in there. There was no vegetables in that whole entire trip. I can't remember one. I'm pulling
no celery on the side of the wings even.
You know what? I should have done that. I should have done that. There should have been a carrot or a piece of celery somewhere in the mix. When we have EVO Food Championship Edition, we'll talk about that because we need to bring that conversation into the space. But, I'm really excited for the show. I'm going to also be there again this year. Again, thank you to you and the team for hooking us up and getting us in, giving us the space to be able to cover the show in the ways that we want to for Spawn On Me. But this is a really interesting year. Last year was huge again, and kudos and congratulations to you and the team on that. And it feels like every time we have a conversation where we get a chance to hang out, the show has just reached another level of importance and spectacle and all of those things. How are you looking at, this year coming into this and some of the goals that you've set? You feel like, are you meeting those goals and kind of, crushing it and getting to the space that you want? Or I'm sure there's always room for growth, but how are you feeling about, the transition from 2024 to 2025?
I mean, there's always room for growth, yes. But I think the big part of coming off of last year, of running the largest, open bracket video game tournament that's ever existed, I think focusing exclusively on growth can maybe get away from focusing on the fact that when you hit that scale, when you hit that milestone, that's an excuse to focus on refinement, maybe first and foremost, and letting growth come naturally. And so we've took a lot of time this year to look at everything that was on the show floor, all the experiences around the show. It is easy to say, how do we make them bigger and better? The arcade is bigger and better. Yes, there's more cabinets in there. There's more types of cabinets in there. The experience that delivers is more intentionally designed around what was a gigantic old arcade like in person. How did that situate on a show floor? What was that feeling like when you were in there pressing buttons? But it's also, how do we take the things that were good ideas on the show floor last year and turn them into really intentionally produced experiences? So the museums on the show floor this year, better build outs, different content in them, different content sections in them. Get to the end of it this time, actually be able to buy a poster of some of the art that you just saw in the museum, as I definitely underestimated the sheer volume of emails that would come in from people who could not buy a poster at the end of that museum. So yes, this year you can exit through the gift shop. It's how do we look at the layout of the tournaments on the show floor to make sure the players can get from pools to pool as cleanly as they need to for the competitors that are coming in and competing in 4 games, for the competitors that are trying to bounce between the fact that there's not just the 8 title arena lineup this year, there's a 16 title lineup because the extended lineup is part of the show. So there's more opportunities to compete. All of those things then living in service to that holistic experience around the festival where, yes, there's the publisher and the exhibitor booths. Yes, there's the large format curated artist alley. Yes, there's BYOC areas and even more tournaments in those. There's free play and casuals to make sure you can be warmed up for those competitions. There is the guy in the corner getting every player he can find to sign the arcade stick from 2004. Like, all of those pieces in place have to have purposeful space on the show floor. And for us this year, we've taken a lot of time on making sure that all of those things purposefully have space on the show floor.
That's rad, because I think one of the things that I've always felt, and this has been, a through line through every time that I've been, it has been very thoughtful where things are, and the transition between having spaces where you can kind of, you're basically an air traffic controller in a lot of different ways when you're building out the stage and building out all of these layers of the show. It sounds like the feedback that you're consistently getting from fans and players is really being listened to and being additive towards the experience. What are some of the other things that you've heard from the community and players that have now kind of made their way into this next version of the show that we're going to see in a month?
So I think there's a lot, to be honest. There's some very expected ones, like getting in and out of the arena experience last year was challenging because it wasn't a gated experience. So there wasn't the actually passing by the security, checking your badge, going in and out the way that we were hoping people could. So that's a ticketed experience this year. Low-cost ticket to make sure that it can still get in and out, that it can still be something that is appreciable for a large portion of the community, but can avoid the line that materialized in 2024. We had a ton of feedback last year about how the arcade was beloved, but they wanted the opportunity to pass through the arcade en route to other locations on the show floor. They didn't necessarily want to go to the arcade as a destination. They wanted the arcade to be something that was constantly present in how they moved around EVO. And so the arcade this year has moved to the center of the show floor and has expanded the number of pathways in and out of it. So you can always walk by a machine and stop, play a game, and then get up to go do something else, or perhaps literally never leave the arcade, as that was where I wish I spent some more time last year. The museum is now up front and center because it was something where that's a first impression activity or something that as you're leaving the show is something you wanted to get back to. Whereas last year, again, it was a destination location. We're trying to make sure that that type of feedback is very closely listened to. Where water stations are around the show floor this year has moved, so they're more accessible from where they were last year. Even where the tournament ops station was on the show floor has moved, because a big piece of feedback there was, I've entered the show floor, the first thing I want to do is stop by the command center to check in on my bracket or verify where I'm going to be as a competitor. That's more accessible for that same purpose. Biggest piece of feedback from last year that I think I'm really excited was corrected for this year is there's the partial airsoft wall between the tournament pit and the arena experience, where last year there was a banner on there because budgets are a thing. This year there is a gigantic LED wall stretching across that area, so that while you're competing, particularly on Saturday, you can still see what's going on in the arena experience. Or while you're in pools on Friday, you can see what's happening over on the EVO Showcase stage, so that you know what's happening around the show in that capacity. If you're sitting and playing casuals on Sunday, you can actually watch that. Big option for Sundays. There is a seating area around that screen in the festival location, so you don't necessarily need to go borrow a chair from a casual setup if you just want to sit and watch some of the finals. Let the casual players play their casuals, please. We have chairs for you. Those types of refinement pieces for the show, I think, are the most important things that we can do for the show in a lot of ways. Because although we can consistently expand to new activities and new treatments and bigger and better everything, because end goal always bigger and better everything. Those small things impact the vibe at the show, impact the experience at the show very, very directly, and they stack up to make for good experiences. So we want to make sure we hit all those. Same reason the arena experience itself has pivoted heavily this year. The entire staging and seating environment in that room is different from 2024. Screen sizes in that room now literally cannot be larger. You cannot hang larger screens in this building than are hanging in that arena experience this year. They won't let us. So I think all of those refinements are going to lead to an EVO that is not just as enjoyable as it's been in prior years in all the ways that it was enjoyable, but is better in lots of little ways that matter that will help this be probably the best EVO experience somebody can have.
So confirmed, you can now see EVO from space with the largest screen.
I mean, the building has a ceiling on it, so the from space part's a little challenging, but you can definitely watch finals at a great distance.
Reasonable. That was the answer I got from ChatGPT, so don't mind that. That was something I read in the prompt that I gave it. But I love the fact that you all continuously talking about those quality of life things. I think that's a huge part of the experience. I think when you're putting on a big show like this, usually the outliers aren't necessarily always positive, and when you do get some of those potentially not negative but like quibbles that people have, it is great to be able to see that is a part of the feedback loop that you all are getting and working on. I love to hear about the experiences parts of the show. Again, like we're going to definitely talk about the arena and day 3 and all of those things. I definitely want to hear about that. But like those moment to moment things of like the arcade being bigger and having more cabinets and things like that. Artist Alley also kind of getting some love as well, which I've read and heard that's also getting some touch on that as well. How has it been for folks who have, come up to you and said, man, this was a really great experience and I had a ton of fun. Here is the memory that I have from that year. Do you feel like that is also growing in terms of now you being, one of the main faces of this really fantastic event? Are you finding that more people are coming up to you and you're catching a lot of those memories now as well from people to say like, man, that thing that happened on X day was the thing that made my show?
The cool part about the show at this point is it is so large that type of feedback is omnipresent. It's almost possible to truly take it all in. You're dealing with tens of thousands of people. Everyone has their own unique experience. Everyone has their unique feedback. One of the things that I love hearing about from the show is individual pieces of feedback that are about specific things that are different than whatever I've heard about for the last couple of days. So if I get a ton of really cool feedback about the tournament or the arcade from Monday to Wednesday, and then somebody pops up on Thursday to talk about the cosplay competition last year, and it was their first time cosplaying at a large format festival, and they took a whole bunch of photos, and it was incredibly cool to see the champion and watch that champion get awarded a trip to another EVO event somewhere else on the planet, and going, that could be me someday. That's my new competition path. That's my personal goal. Those types of things stick with me a lot. Last year, one of my favorite stories in general actually came out of Majin Obama in one of the streams that he hosted after the event, because he has access to almost the entire show because he's on-air talent for the show, very important member of the community in general, has flown over, has access to arcades in Japan. And there was a conversation with him about how he just wanted to live in the arcade at the show because so many memories with games or other people or experience over the years could be found just in that footprint, that footprint was worth attending the show for him. We had some people that came to the show last year that were extremely excited about the fact that they could meet other people at the show, and it's ad hoc at EVO where you're walking around, running into some people. And this year there's even an official version of that. We've got Shinkiro and JB Style coming this year as featured artists, and that means there's huge sections of the museum showcasing some of the works out of their careers, which is incredible pieces, including 2 new pieces they made specifically for this show. But we also have an actual meet and greet area this year where you can go and meet them, maybe get some of those works signed, where some of the developers and publishers are popping up in that meet and greet. Some of the personalities around the community are popping up in that meet and greet, so that there can be a way to have that experience that you value from the show floor be scheduled so that you know for sure it can fit into your show floor experience. And I think the ability to have both intentional versions of what's happening at the show and all the ad hoc versions of what happens at the show together means all those little stories that I hear about over the year will not only have more of, but in theory, more of those experiences will fit into everyone who's attending the show's individual experience. So there's just hopefully more opportunities for each of those story-making moments to happen.
That's great, because I know for me, it's always a little bit of a mad scramble for covering everything that I possibly can and getting a chance to see everything. I love what you've done with the museum, and seeing and hearing that that's going to get an expansion this year is really cool to me, because as a person who is old, I like to be able to to be able to see things that I have not seen, and get a chance to see all the stuff that Mark Mann has had in his basement for at least, multiple years, and be like, oh, you brought that to the show. That's rad that you were able to do that stuff.
He's dug out some stuff this year too.
I am sure. I can just imagine I want to get him and I want to get Micah together and get them both mashed up and be like, both of you talk about all the stuff you have in your homes that you have cordoned away for us. But I think
there's value in those conversations, because I think the coolest part about fighting games in general is how generational fighting games have become.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're making a joke about, well, I'm old, so I remember a lot of stuff, and I want that nostalgia to be part of my experience. And there's a bunch of people at the event this year where it might be their first time at the event. And one of the coolest things I saw happen in the last couple of years at the show was where that cross-pollinated in all places for me in the Melty Blood tournament, where you had... You had Mr. Naps, who I know from Tekken, competing incredibly well, being up on that stage, playing with literal generations of Melty Blood players in Type Lumina as a new title, and that all converging into a row of people that I was sitting with from 15 different subcategories of fighting game fandom, who were just all connected through those two players that were on stage, and all the different places that those connections rooted.
Mm-hmm.
Part of, I think, what makes EVO is that can happen everywhere on the show floor.
Oh, it is we talk a little bit about the museum layer of that stuff and all of those pieces, but even me as a person who has been a fan of the FGC and been a player for many, many years, not professionally, but as a casual, I still am walking through, the times that I get a chance to go and being like, oh, that's such and such. I remember the match that you had against blah, blah, blah. But that is also, tells you not only about the longevity of the space, but the fact that it is so welcoming to everyone who has had a foot in it to a certain extent. Like, if you've made a name for yourself and you've had those moments where you have garnered some visibility, it is a thing where people will I remember that match that you had against one of my favorite players, or you are my favorite player. It's so cool to be able to see you. But also, even generationally talking about, we'll pivot away from arcade in a second, but there's a whole generation that has no idea what that means.
That's why the arcade is there.
Right.
I want them to have that experience. I wanted to have that experience.
Yeah.
I grew up somewhere where the biggest arcade I had access to was just, here's a couple of cabs in the corner of a different business.
Yes.
Yeah. And so being able to walk through Evo show floor and that click-clack of buttons, that cacophony of sound.
Yeah.
There are so many players that haven't experienced that before. Having access to that, I think, is, aside from just being cool, historically important.
Yeah. It is a one-to-one of how we got here. We are now in a space where you have to seek out that 1v1, person-to-person kind of interaction unless you're going to an actual tournament. And you don't have those in many spaces anymore. Even the ways that we thought about that in the old pizzeria, or you had the old actual arcade that you were in, a lot of those things don't exist in those same ways. One of the things that I'm really excited about, not only with all of those layers combined, are... This is one of the most stacked years for fighting games that we've seen in a very long time. What does the curation process look like for y'all at this point? Because there are so many games, and then we have stuff that's on the horizon that's coming too, that I'm sure fans have been really excited about the potential of those coming in too. But what's it like to curate and figure out what's going to be the kind of the games for the year?
Hard, which is part of why I think that extended lineup is so important. When you look at how you can schedule a tournament day, or how you can schedule one of the presentation days, the max amount of games that you can fit in that day, presentation-wise, is going to be 4. And once you add a lot of pageantry, maybe only 3. It's why I'm super excited the top 8s are back for the Arena Finals this year.
Yes.
And I also recognize that the day might be a little bit longer because of that. And being able to actually feature more games because of that extended lineup is how I think we approach the difficulty of which games can actually be in that core lineup, can be the games that EVO's promoting leading into this show. That's why I'm really excited about the international expansions, because the show titles in France or in Tokyo or in the Singapore event don't have to be the exact same lineup that is featured in Vegas, because I don't think that challenge is going to get any easier in the years ahead. And I think if we are as lucky as we would hope to be, it becomes endlessly harder because you have that many more games where the player base is large and it's fervent and it is interested in attending offline events and corralling together as a community to celebrate that game. I mean, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is the throwback title this year, and we announced earlier today that it's the largest MVC2 bracket that has ever existed.
Wild.
And just being able to drive that moment in and of itself, I think, is extremely valuable. But when you look at all the games that you could maybe drive that moment for, and all the games that we're currently playing, and all the games that are coming up in the next couple of years, and the bunch of rumored games that aren't even announced yet, and then you stop and go, 4 finals a day. Okay. I think we need to figure out an actual festival format where that's not a limitation. Like when you go to a music festival, there's enough stages that, you can fit 60 bands into 2 to 3 days. And is it the same as going and seeing that band in isolation at an arena or in a stadium? No, absolutely not. You can't see all of it. EVO's already at a scale where you cannot see all of it.
No.
But I think all of it being together is its own unique experience. And so I really want EVO to figure out how do we generate lineups that as an experience have a lot of value to fighting game fans on a community level, but also on a cultural level. Because I think that's the space that EVO can exist sensibly in, because that's not a space you're going to get at Capcom Cup. It's not a space that you're going to run into at Tekken World Tour Finals. It's not a space that some of the international tournaments in the world currently exist in. That's a space that EVO exists in. So how do we lean into that a bit further? Because that's where this all came from anyways. The arcade wasn't one cabinet in the corner. It was an arcade.
Yeah.
And that was a collection. And that collection is where I think all this fandom rooted. So why don't we find a good way to not only pay homage to that, but to service what that was in a way that works for today?
And it feels like the community also, we just talked about generational layers of all of it. But that also is, cultural in, location. That is, the folks who are, I'm not going to say aging out, but like, because you don't really age out until carpal tunnel tells you that you aged out. But it's like,
how are you going to age out? We watched John Choi playing in tournaments last year.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, it feels like it is one of the only spaces that I still see as you can be as competitive as long as you still have the eye-hand coordination to remember what your hands and mind need to do at the same time, right? Which is beautiful. There's very few places where you can do that from a competition standpoint. But it also feels like now with the expansion of the tournament to Japan, to France, to Singapore, that those cultural connectivities are also going to be very interesting for you all as planning it, to say like, all right, so what does the experience feel like in Vegas as opposed to Singapore? What are we going to change that's going to go from those? And, venue will dictate some of that stuff, but the ideas of how do we play into some of the cultural relevancies that are in those spaces too is going to be really cool for you all to be able to do that. Plus, curation of game and how does that work? Is that part as exciting as it sounds? Because it seems like for me as a layman, that's a lot of work. But like for you as a person who's, driving a lot of that stuff, that feels like a really dope opportunity for so many different interesting layers.
It's definitely a lot of work. I think it's an unbelievably dope opportunity. Yeah. And I think it's also this extremely valid opportunity in ways that I didn't expect before I was working here. Because one of the things that changed after I started working at EVO, I had access to EVO attendance data.
Yeah.
So I got to look at the sheer volume of players just that I knew in Europe that don't make it to Vegas, or the pockets of players that I know exist around Japan that never make it to Vegas for any number of reasons, and vice versa. And so coming up with opportunities to bring the EVO experience somewhere new, to make it more accessible to those players who do not have easy access to it because they can't drive over from Arizona. I think that's important on its own, but also giving the opportunity for that cultural exchange to happen in the opposite direction is really engaging to me. Going to EVO Japan the last few years and watching some of the players that had not been to EVO Japan before, watching some of the talent that hadn't been to EVO Japan before. You have Yipes making videos about being in Japan because that's a new experience for Yipes, and then you think about how long Yipes has not just been culturally important to fighting games, how long I've been watching Yipes be culturally important to fighting games.
Yes.
And so getting to watch some of those first experiences is eye-opening, because that cultural exchange had worked the other direction for decades. And now is the opportunity to go that opposite direction. And what is appreciated in each of those areas, what's expected in each of those regions is different. And so watching that cohabitate around EVO and what EVO has been and what EVO can bring to those player bases is huge to me. Yeah. That's why EVO France is so interesting to me right now. EVO France launched this year. It's barely had ticketing open now. There's 60 countries already registered for it. I know it's wild. Quickly on pace to be the largest fighting game event in the history of Europe, not just France. And that's happening because EVO's brand is accessible enough that it creates that rally point. The brand is big enough to almost inspire that rally point. But if that can grow interest regionally, nationally, I think that also builds up all the other events around it. It's one of the things we've seen in America. We have many, many scaled convention-level events, convention-level tournaments in America. And that's a hard thing to generate on its own. It's easier when there's something like EVO in the market to generate that interest and that awareness. So having that opportunity elsewhere to do the same thing, I think is super valuable. So a little bit of a rambly answer there, but in general, I think this is all dope. Yeah. I want to keep doing it for a while. But it's dope in so many different ways.
Yeah. I mean, I love to hear you talk about the history there. Cause I know I'm some years older than Yipes, but it's like, I know from my visibility of him and giving him some flowers really quick, he's been not only a brand ambassador for the FGC for a very long time as a native New Yorker who's no longer there, but like every time I see him on stream, it reminds me of home. It's like, oh, that's what it feels like to be back in New York in the BX with my people who are in there. But he's also now a cultural ambassador, making these moves and doing these things in Japan for things like EVO and things like that. But I think that also brings up a good question of what has it been like to work with the countries themselves? Like, I'm sure that there's a lot of different things that you have to kind of pay attention to from a cultural perspective, from like how do we make sure that folks feel comfortable perspective. You talked about going to Japan and France and in Singapore. Are all of those countries now also getting to learn more about the sport through an event like EVO, and how has it been to kind of be the bridge for that for them and those communities?
I don't even know how to turn that into a soundbite answer.
Say what you feel, Rick.
Yeah, right. I find it really interesting because there's so much that you know and you don't know at the same time. Like, I know a lot about hosting events.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot about hosting events in Japan.
Right.
A lot of what you do to host an event in Japan is very similar to what you would do here, but the processes around it, the expectations around it are very, very different. The conversations that have to be had around it are different. And that's everything from layouts and show floors. That's where you purchase tickets and how you deal with ticketing. EVO Japan has a separated ticketing process where you purchase a ticket on pia.gg, you register for the tournament on start.gg. Vegas, that's just all on start.gg. And a big reason for that is when you buy a ticket from pia.gg, you can go to the local convenience store and you can just print your ticket out at the store. And that's so common that's expected. And so like international considerations don't really want to divorce ticketing from bracketology. Yeah. Local conversation is, I really want to be able to pick up my ticket at 7-Eleven. And so finding all those little connection points and idiosyncrasies, super, super important, super interesting. Sometimes challenging because there's going to be things that you do or you don't know that you think you know or you think you don't know. But that's what makes going to the different places engaging. That's part of that cultural exchange. And I think in exploring that through EVO, you also find places that exchange lives really, really well. EVO is, in Japan, for instance, a American-style event in Japan and to the best of its ability to deliver that. In France, it'll still be a American-style fighting game festival in France, but now positioned and adjusted to best fit that market, best fit Nice as a city, best fit some of the expectations of that fan base. And that can be as simple as language, and that can be as expected as changes in games. Having Cooperation Cup at EVO Japan, for instance, makes an incredible amount of sense. Matsuda-san is the head of the tournaments over there. He's the head of both. Might as well run them both at the same time.
Right.
And that's not the case in France, but also France has an incredible history with Dragon Ball FighterZ, so that seems like a very natural place for that game to still be present in 2025. And I know that's not really directed to how you run the event or how you set up the event, but I think that really basic kind of adjustment in expectations exists at every single level of the event development. And figuring out how best to balance all those it's the job in the literal sense.
Yeah.
But it's the most interesting piece of going to the international events, because that balance and that job is also the fun part, because there's an endless amount to learn. And I don't know. I think that's the cool part about it, because it gives you a little bit of a different flavoring everywhere you go, whether it's how the stream is presented or, again, how the activities at the show floor come together, and all the parts that are then the same, but ever so slightly different because it is somewhere else.
Yeah.
Just those very small adjustments become some of the coolest things to be part of.
I mean, that's the reason why I love to hear you talk about the cultural exchange, because I feel like this is an undercurrent in a pillar of the FGC, right? It is always about kind of, the 1v1 version of it, but the cultural exchange part is the thing that has brought everyone really together over the years and has kind of kept everyone, with friendships and partnerships and all those things that are connected. So it's dope to hear you think and talk about the kind of small intricacies that wind up changing across those things. And also, I think a lot of people just feel like, oh, well, you just go to a place and it works. Nope. Like you have to explain things to people while you're actually asking them to host the thing in their home country and figure out what those things are from those largest conversations. I do want to talk about day 3, because, the final day is always, the penultimate part of the show. Right. It is the day where people are, you're in the arena, you're hearing things from across the space all over. You're focused, getting all those things together. And it feels like from conversations I've heard you had in other spaces about how you're thinking about changing this experience for players and for the fans. You talked about the ticketed part. You talked about larger screens and being able to have more spaces for people to see things. What's the thing that you're most excited for when it comes to that layer of the stagecraft and the kind of bringing everyone together for that kind of those final moments of the show?
I think the experiential component of that is in endless need of refinement. No matter how well you do it, it can always be better. So I know this year, in talking about how the stage is set up, talking about where the screens are, talking about camera placements and where camera placements can move, looking at how are players introduced, how do those introductions live alongside the custom music and the music videos that now live but literally on top of that custom soundtrack. How does that feed into the actual matches that are about to happen? How do those matches sequentially get from one match to another as quick as they can, knowing we still have to have presentation opportunities with some of our publishing partners, where still have to fit in some actual arena activities or advertising breaks so that we can, pay for the show. How do all those things stack together neatly? How do we get in and out of each of those things swiftly and efficiently? How do we help that show day be as long as it needs to be and feel as short as it can be? That puzzle is incredibly engaging to me to watch, and talking to the team that gets to work on it on the day-to-day, there is so much that goes into that the smallest decisions have these windfall effects. And so watching that get put together, having a clear understanding of the what's and the whys around that's the part of Sunday that's really excited me from the job aspect. From the fan aspect, I get to watch 4 games of top 8s this year. That's an easy thing to be excited about. And coming off the matches from last year, I'm wondering, is Big Bird going to get to grand finals again in Street Fighter? I'm wondering what's going to happen with City of the Wolves for the first time here this year, and which players and player bases are going to converge on that, which storylines from the last couple of months are going to continue. Do I get to see Reynolds and Goichi again? Is there an answer for that matchup this time? Because there didn't seem to be last time. That part of Sunday is what I'm looking forward to, outside of when it's done and the wave of relief after the staff photo when I get to sleep.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure that after that final bell has been rung, you're like, I gotta get some sleep. Because I'm sure it takes multiple months to get everything together. I'm sure even from the end of the last show, you're already starting to plan for the next show and getting those things together for sure.
Yeah. We'll have things we talk about for upcoming shows in Vegas this year. So it doesn't actually really ever stop. Even the joke about, hey, I get to go to sleep because it's done. It's like, no, you got to wake up on Monday and strike the venue. It's not done.
Yeah.
So living in that cadence, though, is also an interesting part of going from show to show, going from year to year now. There's a wave of that learning to ride is both fun and challenging, and I root in fighting games. The challenge of things is part of the joy of them. So that part is, again, part of what makes the job dope.
Well, I'm really excited for everything that's coming, and again, the ideas that potentially other games might be sparked at this show. Everyone is still running rumors in multiple circles about Fighting Souls, and folks are excited for 2XKO to finally make its EVO debut in a real way on the stage in tournament fashion. I think what I always love every time I get a chance to either go in person or to watch from home is it does feel like the biggest show on the planet. Like that part of it, as a competitor and as a person who loves to see that minutia of all of the things happen, and then I get to put on my producer brain and be like, oh shit, how did they get that shot in that part there? What cameras are they using? Like, I nerd out about the technical stuff a lot.
You're gonna have a fun year this year. There's some changes on a technical level.
Ooh, all right. I'm just tell me where I can't stand when I have my cameras when I'm trying to capture stuff
in the way. You can't stand in the way.
Yes, yeah. Like I remember the first time I went, I was telling everyone, I was like, if I'm in the way, kick me, move me out of the space. Just tell me to move. I don't want to be in anybody's shot. But seriously, again, it is a blast. I'm so hyped that you and the team are commanding this and making this happen. It is my favorite event of the year. I am blessed to be able to go see some of my favorite folks be able to play in a space that they really enjoy. And again, to see that cultural exchange happen every year between so many different players across the world. I'm excited to see what happens in France and Singapore as well for you, because I know that's going to be hype as hell as well. So, man, time has flown. It has gone by really quickly. I wish I could stay with you for another hour because I have so many questions. But want to thank you again for being here. Thank you again for spending time with me. I know you're extremely busy and have many, many things that you're working on. But again, thank you so much for the time, man. It's always dope to catch up and see how you're doing and see what the next iteration of EVO is going to be for this year for fans and friends at home.
Always happy to stop by and talk about it. Always happy that you and everyone else come to the show to check it out. I guess I should do the promo thing here to close this out.
Yeah, exactly.
If you have not come to EVO before, this is an incredibly, incredibly good year to come to EVO for reasons I can't even talk about yet. There's other stuff announcing still for the rest of July that is delightful. And you know, if a 3-day weekend is too long a commitment to come check something out, because this isn't part of what you do every year, like the other voices on this show. There's day passes available. Come check it out just for a day, for an afternoon. There is a wealth of what makes fighting games great at EVO for competitors, for fans. And so if you're casually interested, if you are incredibly invested, and anywhere in between those two statements, come check it out with us August 1st to 3rd. It is worth the time. I can promise that this year. Looking forward to see everybody.
Man, listen to that man promo. That man knows what he's doing. He got his pat down, and he's right, and he's true. It's all of it is true. Every time that I get a chance to go, it is the best time on the planet. So you should definitely come to Vegas and come hang out with us and get some time in. Definitely get some KI in, because I know that bad boy is going to get some love on the show as well. And again, Rick, thank you so much for your time today, and everybody at home. We're going to have a lot of coverage from the show. I'm going to be running around trying to snag people for interviews. I have not put in my time because I think I missed the competitive window. I think I just missed it by a couple of hours. But even so, I'm old. My hands don't work. They don't know.
Competitive tickets are available till the end of the day.
Oh, end of the day? Oh.
By the time this airs, maybe you've missed it. But right now, you can still go get that done.
You can go get that done. You can go watch me go 1-1-1 like I did last time I went. It was great.
Wait, how'd you get a draw in there?
I got DQ'd because I had to go interview somebody, and I couldn't get back to my pools fast enough.
So I got to win a loss in a DQ.
I got to win a loss in a DQ. It was my first EVO competing, and I was like, you know what? That's not bad. I ain't mad at it. I didn't go 0-2, so I'm happy about that.
No, you did not. This is
1-1-1.
Not quite a triple double, but it's also not 0-2.
Hey, it is a better number than my AARP card number, so that's fine.
I mean, give it another shot this year. Maybe you'll get a Chipotle card instead of an AARP card. You know?
No doubt, I will drown my sorrows in some guacamole. Thank you, fam, for rocking and for coming through. Hopefully we'll get a chance to see you at the show to say hello in person. And everybody, we're going to have more Spawn on Me after this, and we'll catch you right after the break.
Hey there, my name is Naomi, and you might know me from internet things like hosting for IGN. I'd like to introduce you to my new show, This Week in Gaming. It's 20 minutes, short and sweet, and every week I go through all the important gaming news that you need to know, and then we have folks on like Kahlief Adams, who shows up quite often, talk about all the important news. And you get to listen to it wherever you get your podcast, so it's easy to find. Just look for This Week in Gaming and make sure to give it a follow. And every week, Monday at 9 p.m. Pacific time, you get a brand new episode. I hope you'll join me.